Yo, what is going on? Thank you so much for joining in. So I want to take a few minutes and talk about what my most anticipated reads are of 2024 here in the new year coming very soon. And a quick note too is that not all these books are coming out necessarily in 2024. With me actually already having some of these books on hand, these are just books that I'm looking forward to reading in the new coming year. And it's definitely not a full entire list, as I know there's going to be more and more books coming out, especially new indie authors as well. Do not worry, these are not the 10 or 11 books that I'm only going to read next year, because I'm going to read hopefully a lot. These are just some of the books that I know I'm looking forward to, so if you're ready, let's dive into it. Alright, for you guys who've been watching my channel for a little bit, you'd probably know what I'm going to say next, with that being book number 6 in the Sun Eater series by Christopher Ruocchio, being Disquiet Gods. I'm super excited to pick up another installment in the series because where we left off in book number 5 was absolutely insane, and I'm excited to see the characters that we have from book number 5 to book number 6, and if we have any more come into the picture. And as you guys know, I'm a huge fan of the series because it's one of my top ongoing series at this point. I even made a full video tier ranking each book in that series, where each one is A+ tier and above. So almost anything that Ruocchio spits out, I am looking forward to reading. And I'm pretty sure Disquiet Gods comes out around March or April, I think early April of 2024. So looking forward to that. And if you have not checked out the Sun Eater series just yet, I recommend you taking a little bit of time and researching a little bit, because I think you're going to enjoy it. Alright, the next book that I'm super excited to check out in 2024 is going to be the conclusion to the Empire of the Wolf series, with book number 1 being called The Justice of Kings, and book number 2 being The Tyranny of Faith, with book number 3 coming out very soon being The Trials of Empire. Book number 2 is in my top 10 fantasy books of all time, so obviously I'm super excited to check out how this story concludes. The events in book number 2 was absolutely insane, with the last quarter of this book just being an absolute page turner. I'm excited to see how Swan picks up that antagonist that we found in book number 2 and book number 1 as well, and to see how our protagonists take on this rising force. Also, the demonic world in this is absolutely insane, so hopefully that's explored a little bit more,
because that's one of my favorite elements in this series.
And that is The Trials of Empire, coming out February 6th in 2024. Alright, the next book that I'm super looking forward to reading is actually a book that's already out by a debut indie author, with that book being Die Rock 88. And look at this cover, man. This cover simply just works for me. It makes me want to get immersed in the story right away, which I will be here pretty soon. Not sure exactly when, but I'm definitely going to read this very soon. As darkness descends, Atlas must rise. With that being book number 1 in an ongoing series that I'm excited to see grow over time. But look at this cover, man. We have this person holding a energy laser sword thing, which I can always get behind. This lonely person standing on a rock, and then the spaceship descending in the background there with this planet or moon-like structure in the background. So overall, super excited to read this thing. Again, this is a debut indie author, so I definitely encourage you to go check out this book and support this author, so I'm looking forward to it. Die Rock 88. But the next book comes from another indie author, with that being T.A. Bruno, with the book being In the Orbit of Sirens. Not only does this cover look epic, but he also described this being inspired by 2 of my trigger words, Hyperion and Dune. And as you guys know, Dune and Hyperion are some of my favorite sci-fi books, my favorite books of all time. So when you say these 2 words, inspire your book, I'm going to read it. The last fragments of the human race are forced to adapt to a dangerous new world or face extinction. So thank you again so much, T.A. Bruno, for sending this book. I'm super excited to check this one out. But the next book is coming from a very, very well-known author in the fantasy genre, with that being Brandon Sanderson. With that being book number 5 in the Stormlight Archive, Wind and Truth. Now this book was recently announced and should be coming out at the end or the tail end of 2024. Really, any book by Brandon Sanderson is just something that you should probably go check out, because he's just a cornerstone in the fantasy genre now, with his books just selling like hotcakes. And for a good reason too. They're so much fun to read through, even though they're massive chunky books. Book number 2 in the Stormlight Archive, Words of Radiance, is in my top 10 fantasy books of all time, so I'm excited to see where the story picks up in book number 5. And what's great is that you can usually expect really good things from Brandon Sando with anything that he pushes out, even his secret projects that he pushed out on Kickstarter. So, of course, I'm looking forward to reading the main series that I'm reading from him, being the Stormlight Archive. Alright, my next anticipated book comes from another well-known author, with that being J. Kristoff, with that being the sequel to Empire the Vampire, being called Empire of the Damned. This is another book that's in my top 10 fantasy books of all time, so obviously I'm super excited to see what happens next for our main character, Gabriel de Leon. The events in this book were epic, brutal, action-packed, and vampires are just cool, and it's awesome to see vampires portrayed in a different light other than a teenage romance. So, super excited to see more scary vampires, to see how and if our dark-filled world, where the sun is always dim, gets any brighter. Again, that is Empire the Damned from J. Kristoff. Looking forward to that big time. Alright, next up comes from another indie author who made my top 10 fantasy books of all time with his Blood and Steel saga, with that being E.J. Doble. So the Blood and Steel saga, right now I read 3 books in that series so far, with that being The Things of War, The Horns of Grief, and the prequel novella that you should read today called The Crown of Omens. Well, book 2.5, so the book coming right after this, between books 2 and 3 obviously, is called Project Lightning. But if you watched my interview with E.J. Doble, you know we had a title reveal in that interview, so maybe you should go check out that interview. After reading The Horns of Grief, E.J. Doble has become one of my top authors of all time. So almost anything he pushes out now, I am going to pick up same day or even before if I can. I highly recommend you starting the series today, as there's so much more to get into with more books being planned by E.J. Doble. So super excited for that next installment being book 2.5. For the next book, you guys might be a little bit disappointed in me after I tell you the book that I'm planning to read next year, because you might be asking yourself,
why have you not read that just yet?
Well, I'm sorry, but that book, I'm planning on reading it. It's going to be The Lord of the Rings, specifically The Fellowship of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is just a series I have not picked up yet, so I'm super looking forward to reading the acclaimed Tolkien. I mean, I did read The Hobbit, which I had a pretty good experience with. I just have not read the actual Lord of the Rings series just yet. But I love the Peter Jackson films, like probably most of you guys do. So reading the stories in terms of how these movies were inspired, I cannot wait to dive into. Especially with these editions right here. These are the special edition Alan Lee illustrated ones. So they have fantastic images within the story. Look, I just randomly picked that page right here. Awesome artwork. So this is going to be a fun experience reading through this book. So when am I going to read this? I'm not sure just yet. But Lord of the Rings, where can I go wrong, man? So looking forward to reading that one for sure. But the next book comes from a very well-known sci-fi series, with that being book number 2 in the Expanse, being Caliban's War. So Leviathan Wakes is in my top 10 sci-fi books of all time, so I'm super excited to finally get back into the Expanse world, with hopefully those same characters and potentially even more that we get to learn more about within the next installment. I know I hear that the TV show is a fantastic adaptation, which I have not watched just yet because I wanted to read the books first to experience the books entirety before watching that TV show. I'm excited to finally move forward within the Expanse series, with that being book number 2, which I have this awesome special edition version of right here with these red sprayed edges. And according to the Library Journal, this is a must-read space opera, so I'm going to do just that. So, Caliban's War in the Expanse, book number 2. The next book comes from another very well-known author, with that being Jim Butcher, with that being the 4th book, or the 4th installment in the Dresden Files. And that book is called Summer Night, and if you watched my top 10 fantasy books of all time, you know that Dresden Files, at least book number 3, is really up there. I love the Dresden Files, I love Harry Dresden as a character, I love the way that Butcher tells the story, and I've heard from a lot of people that the first 3 books in the Dresden Files are the weakest books in that series, so I'm finally at a point now to where I'm past those 3, going into book number 4, but I love books 1 through 3, so I think I'm only going up from here. But the next book comes from another indie author you probably have not heard of just yet, but I think that's going to change here very soon because the quality of his work is just astounding. With me currently reading his first book, Lost Souls, and that being, Ryan Skeffington. I'm almost finished with this book right here, and this has been one of my top reads of the year in 2023, and he has plans to release book number 2 in 2024, with that being called Eternal Dreams. This book right here is giving me an existential crisis, and I love it. There are so many characters packed into this pretty short novel. It's like nothing I've ever read before, and I'm super excited to continue within this series. So thank you again, Ryan Skeffington, for sending me this copy of Lost Souls. I'm so excited to continue within your series here. Alright, the last book that I'm going to talk about today is coming from another indie author, where I read his first book, being The Forsaken Planet by Brian Wilson. And this is an indie sci-fi debut right here. I had a lot of fun reading this book that left me satisfied, but also wanting more, which is great because the next book comes out very soon, with that being called The Son of the Prophets. This is a single POV sci-fi fantasy adventure that's full of magic, action, and battles. And I'm excited to check out the series even more because it's a lot of fun. And thank you again, Brian Wilson, for sending me this copy. I'm super excited to check out The Son of the Prophets. And there we have it. Those are some of my most anticipated reads of 2024. So what are you looking forward to reading? Are any of these on my list, on yours as well? And for sticking around this long, you've earned 1 XP token. And if you're already a subscriber, you get an extra XP token. So here you go. Have a good one. Keep reading. Peace.